I think I always had a passion for environmentalism, sustainability, but I didn't know that could be a career track that led me specifically to the type of jobs we're seeing now. I think it was just kind of blossoming at that point, and now we're kind of full steam ahead, where there's a lot of job opportunities in private sector and local government. Those start to happen while I was in my first job, led me to want to go into a graduate program. Absolutely. I think a few things. It taught me how to work in different perspectives. We had a lot of different students and even professors from different backgrounds, and so we were able to hear kind of the full gamut of A to Z of people's technical expertise being brought into the conversation. And I think that's the benefit of having a bunch of graduate students whose undergraduate degrees, it's not like one path on how you get there. You come from all walks of life, all backgrounds and experiences and age, and so we have a very diverse pipeline, I guess you could say, of students. And so getting to hear those was really, really interesting. And, I also brought my own experience and background to the table. And I think just kind of opening your perspective, specifically, I think of like TH and Dr. Dorsey were two of the professors I had a lot of classes with, and they, come, especially TH, like very unorthodox, in a lot of ways, and that's what makes TH. Just being able to reframe the way that we've been taught to think about things in a very specific way, but there are 12 other ways to think about it, and explore the world from a different mindset. And challenge the norm, I guess is the best way I could put it. Challenge the norm, push back on the norm. And, it's always easier said in practice than in reality, but it's still good to have that spirit with you, even as you get pushed back from the norm of policy and every other thing that we're kind of bound by in society. So I currently am the Sustainability and Resilience Officer for the City of Tampa since just a few weeks ago, permanently, and I was appointed in the interim in March of this year. So it's just been a few months, and then I've been with the city for the coordinator role, the sustainability coordinator role, about 2.5 years, including my time now as the officer. So during my second year at Patel, I actually took an internship with our solid waste team at the City of Tampa, and so that was my first peek into local government and understanding. My first experience, I had never worked for the public sector or any government, and so kind of learned the ropes with them. And it's an internship that's had a lot of Patel students. It's only available, except for one other intern I could think of, it was only Patel students. So they specifically offer it to Patel. A lot of us have gone through that program, and most of the people who go through that program end up following the solid waste specific lens. I, deviated to just sticking to the broader sustainability, but obviously solid waste is something I'm very passionate about. That's how I got my foot in the door, I guess you could say, and then joined the city about a year after I graduated. So in March, the city released our first vulnerability assessment, and so this is a state-required document that requires us to look at our city-owned assets. So that could be anything from a building to a road, like transportation network, so a wastewater or stormwater pumping station, something like that. Look at its vulnerability to flooding. And so the flooding is categorized into 3 different types. So it's rainfall, storm surge, and sea level rise. It's a really long 200+ page, very technical document, but the best way I can summarize it is sea level rise, where most of the city is well above what we're predicted to face in the 2070, 2040 time horizon. But we are definitely not immune, as we saw, unfortunately, in fall of 2024, to the extreme rainfall events and storm surge. And so it identified those areas of the city as well as the individual city assets. It identified neighborhoods that are most vulnerable to these type of incidences. And so when the mayor came into office, one of the things that her administration really led with was the PIPES program. And so that's really putting in a ton of money into hardening and replacing pipes underground. So it's some of our most expensive infrastructure that nobody sees, it's all underground, but it's our stormwater pipes, our wastewater pipes, and our water pipes. It can be relining it, it could be replacing it, whatever makes the most sense. So for example, if we look at our wastewater pipes, we are preventing, number one, water from filtering in. We don't want storm water getting into our wastewater pipes because then it adds to the capacity that we have to treat at our wastewater plant. And so if we have less to begin with, then, it ends up being more efficient overall. And then we also don't want the wastewater, getting out into the environment. So it kind of works both ways. We don't want stormwater coming in, and we don't want wastewater leaking out. And so continuing to invest and make those infrastructure more resilient is really important. A lot of our pipes that were laid when the city, first took off 100 years ago, that infrastructure has never been replaced. And so this administration has been really focused on investing in things that are not sexy, people don't think about it, people don't want to think about it, especially sewage pipes, that's not the most appealing topic, but obviously it's super important to both, the way our city functions, but also the health and environment of our city. Those are things that you don't want just leaking out into the environment. So yeah, millions of dollars investing in the actual pipes, and then also the pumping stations that are actually applying the pressure to get those things moving from, point A to point B. I would say we've had a big focus on extreme heat in the city of Tampa, especially the last year. Just over 1 year ago, we released our heat resilience playbook. So it is a plan that really focuses on what the city can do in particular to mitigate the effects of extreme heat. We talk about flooding and rain and hurricanes as being a threat, but the climate hazard that the city of Tampa is most vulnerable to consistently is actually extreme heat. I believe in the 1960s, we had about 20 days where our heat index was over 100 degrees on average. In the 2020s, we're now seeing that be 80 to 90 days. So almost a quarter of the year, we are experiencing an average heat index of over 100 degrees. So we're not living in the same climate we were in the 1960s, and the data is supporting that. And so how do we make better decisions? And the city's role can be the policy side and then the infrastructure. We're responsible for a lot of the public right-of-way, the public realm, the public spaces in our city. And so can we add a tree? Also get more creative than just trees. That's like one good solution, but it's not the only one. And even like maybe some programs to help people be more resilient individually in their homes and in their community. And so we're trying to navigate this threat that we're facing and causes more deaths than hurricanes, typically hurricanes, flooding, and lightning combined in the United States. So it is, it is not just an inconvenience is kind of what I like to say. There is an actual threat behind it. And as Floridians, we typically tend to, kind of wear our resilience to heat as like a badge of honor. And we are more resilient probably than a lot of other parts of the world, but we are still facing a hotter climate. So we have our playbook, and we're just continuing to build those relationships with internal departments to change things, as well as stakeholders in the community or even USF. I would say project management and collaboration. So I know people don't like group projects, but the reality is when you get out into the field, that is how we do every project. Every project that I do is a group project for the most part, especially in sustainability, right? Like I'm not the department who owns or has the responsibility of the pipe or the pond or the park, but I'm trying to influence it. And so I have to work with the staff that really holds that responsibility, or that's their realm, and work with them. And so every collaboration is key. If you can't get along or you can't, move forward with those folks, you're just going to be stuck. Even though you believe in it, if you can't get others to come along that journey with you, then you're not going to make as much headway or improvement as you can when you bring those other folks on board and head in the same direction together as much as you can. There's nothing that's perfect. Definitely GIS is really important. So when TH says go take GIS, you should listen to him because I didn't. I would say one of them was with Dr. Dorsey. We actually worked with a farm, the St. Pete Youth Farm, out in St. Pete in Pinellas County. And so getting to see like the real on the ground opportunities of what we could and could not, do just from a realistic standpoint was really important to just ground truth, that data and our ideas. So I would say that was one. And in general, I think the idea of just like biodigestion just continues to have an impact in my life personally and professionally. I think our solid waste department actually did a pilot where we gave some home biodigesters, and I can't say that that would have happened without the influence of Patel and Mr. Biodigester himself, TH, and so that was really influential, and we're hoping to continue to innovate in that space as well. Yeah, I think a few things. Kind of like I said, GIS is really important in our field, and almost every field at this point is using it. So if you have the time to take that course, I highly, highly recommend it from a technical standpoint. Project management would be another one. If you could do a certification, that's really, really important. Allowing doors to stay open. If you have a specific, like I'm only going to do it this way and this is the only type of internship I want, or this is the only type of field I'm interested in, you're closing a lot of doors of opportunity that you may not know are open. So for me, I didn't necessarily plan to work for the city, to intern for the city, and I didn't know that that was going to be an internship that I would be pursuing. It just came up as an opportunity. I said, why not? I'm interested in this enough, to at least go try it and get that experience. And you just never know what type of relationships you're going to build while you're at Patel that can take you beyond grad school and into your career. And even if, you don't end up working for them, you can lean on them for advice, for mentorship, for connections. And so relationships are important. The knowledge you build is important, but so are the relationships. I think I already had learned those lessons by the time I got to Patel, but Patel solidified the relationship aspect of how important that is for our work. Probably any work that you do, but if you can't create buy-in with the folks that you are working with, then you're going to be rowing against the current just constantly. And in some ways you still feel that way, but that consensus building is a really important skill. And so utilizing your time at Patel to kind of refine that or put yourself in challenging situations where you have to do that instead of being in the Patel bubble where we all know that we care about the environment. And so you're always rowing in the same direction because you all feel the same way. But once you get out of the bubble of Patel, you have to be able to get people to come on that rowing with you in the same direction. Take care of yourself personally. This is like grueling work. The state of Florida sometimes isn't the easiest. I love this state. It's my home state, born and raised, but politically there are challenges that make it difficult some days, and so you need to make sure that you're taking care of yourself along this journey as well.